All right, so today we're diving into something pretty fascinating, Lumia AI. And to guide us through this, we've got the work of Jörg-Owe. Now, Lumia AI, it's not just another AI, it's aiming to be like a real partner in decision-making across all these different sectors, like from healthcare to retail even.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really caught my eye was this whole concept of the world formula. Have you come across that in your research?
Oh, yeah. The world formula, it's really at the heart of what makes Lumia so unique. It's what allows the system to constantly learn and adapt, kind of like a living thing almost. So instead of being stuck with just, like a fixed set of rules, Lumia can actually adjust its own algorithms as it goes, as it encounters new data and faces new challenges.
So it's not just processing information, it's actually understanding the world better as it goes along.
Yeah.
That's a huge step beyond, like a simple AI assistant, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This adaptability is key. It's what lets Lumia tackle such a wide range of applications. Schneppat mentions things like visualizing interior designs, even doing real-time fraud detection. But the potential in healthcare, that's what really struck me, especially in emergency rooms.
Oh, yeah. He talks about Lumia being able to, analyze patient data and help doctors prioritize cases much faster. I mean, can you imagine how many lives could be saved just by making sure that the most urgent cases are seen first?
Exactly. And it's not about replacing doctors or anything like that. It's about augmenting their expertise. Lumia could sift through huge amounts of data, spot patterns, connections that humans might miss. It's like having a super-powered assistant working alongside medical professionals.
You know what this reminds me of? Light Beam Health. They're using predictive analytics to identify potential health risks.
Yeah.
And suggest interventions. Lumia could take that to a whole new level.
Yeah.
But hang on a second. If we're talking about AI analyzing sensitive medical data, doesn't that raise some ethical red flags?
Yeah, you're right. It's a valid concern. But Schneppat addresses this head-on. He emphasizes how Lumia's developers are really prioritizing user education and transparency. They want people to understand how the system works, how their data is being used.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The more we understand AI, the less scary it becomes, right? It's not about blindly trusting the technology. It's about having the knowledge to question it, to make sure it's used responsibly.
Exactly. And Schneppat even connects this approach to the Bletchley Declaration, that global initiative that's pushing for responsible AI development. So it's not just one company doing this. It's becoming a much larger conversation about ethical AI worldwide.
Okay, so we've got this adaptable AI, potentially life-saving applications, a real commitment to ethics. But I'm still curious about the how. Like, what's the magic behind Lumia's ability to learn and make decisions?
Well, Schneppat dives into the tech a bit. Two key terms really stand out: causal machine learning and reinforcement learning. So causal machine learning, it's all about understanding why things happen, not just what happens. It's about those cause and effect relationships.
So instead of just noticing that people buy ice cream and sunscreen at the same time, Lumia could figure out if the heat actually causes people to buy both. That's a whole other level of analysis.
Precisely, yeah. It allows for much smarter predictions, more insightful recommendations. And then there's reinforcement learning. Think of it like Lumia as a student learning through trial and error. It interacts with its environment, gets feedback, and adjusts its actions to get better results over time.
So it's not just processing information. It's actually experimenting and learning from its mistakes. That's almost human-like. No wonder Lumia is being hailed as, this major step forward in AI.
Yeah, it's really pushing the boundaries. But before we get too caught up in the cool factor, let's maybe step back for a second and think about the implications. Schneppat points to this increasing integration of AI into our everyday lives, especially on our mobile devices.
Oh, yeah, right. Our phones are already like mini computers in our pockets. What happens when they start incorporating something as sophisticated as Lumia? It's almost like having an AI extension of ourselves.
That's a great way to put it, and that's where things start to get really interesting. And maybe a little unnerving, too.
I hear ya. But before we spiral into an AI-fueled existential crisis, let's pause here for now. Join us for part 2. Where we'll dive deeper into those potential implications, both the exciting and the unsettling ones. So we're back and still swimming in the deep end with Lumia AI. Last time we were talking about is a amazing ability to adapt and learn, all fueled by those really cool concepts that Schneppat lays out, causal machine learning and reinforcement learning. But where does all this lead? What does Lumia's rise actually mean for the future?
That's the big question, isn't it? Schneppat doesn't give us like a simple answer or anything, but he does point to some really fascinating trends. One that jumped out at me was the potential for Lumia to totally transform the way we work.
Oh, right. He talked about how automation could change the job landscape, like across the board. I got to admit that part kind of makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Are we all going to be replaced by robots?
Yeah, it's a common fear for sure. It makes sense. But I think Schneppert offers like a more nuanced view. He suggests that, yeah, while some jobs will become obsolete, new opportunities will emerge. It's not necessarily about humans versus machines. It's more about humans with machines.
So instead of fearing AI, we should be thinking about how to work alongside it. Like in those sci-fi movies where, humans and AI team up to solve problems. Maybe that's not so far-fetched after all.
Exactly. And Schneppert makes this really interesting comparison. He compares it to the invention of the printing press. Back then, scribes probably feared for their jobs too. But the printing press led to this whole new world of knowledge and communication.
That's a great point. We can't just focus on what we might lose. We got to consider those incredible potential gains too. But even if we embrace this whole idea of, humans and AI working together, there's still that question of control, right? How do we make sure that AI serves humanity? Not the other way around.
Well, Schneppert really stresses the importance of transparency and education. The more we understand about how AI works, the better equipped we are to guide its development,
Yeah.
and ensure it's used ethically.
So it's not about blindly trusting the tech. It's about becoming informed citizens of this new AI-powered world. We need to be able to question it, challenge it, hold it accountable.
Exactly. And that's where Lumia's focus on user education is so important. Schneppert sees it as like setting a precedent for the whole industry. It's about empowering users, not just dazzling them with fancy tech.
Okay, I'm starting to get the bigger picture here, but let's bring it back to Lumia specifically for a sec. Schnepp had hinted at all sorts of potential applications, from healthcare to retail to finance even. Where do you see the biggest impact happening?
Oh, that's a tough one. Lumia's adaptability means it has potential in so many different fields. But personally, I'm really intrigued by its possibilities in healthcare. Schneppert talks about how Lumia could analyze patient data, not only to prioritize emergency cases like we talked about before, but also to personalize treatments and even predict future health risks.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like having a personal AI doctor who knows you better than you know yourself. But again, doesn't that raise some serious privacy concerns? Are we really comfortable with AI having access to all of our medical data?
You're absolutely right to bring that up. Data privacy is a huge issue, and Schneppert doesn't shy away from it at all. He argues that transparency is absolutely essential. Users need to know what data is being collected, how it's being used, who has access to it. They need to have control over their own data.
It sounds like we're walking a tightrope here. We want the benefits of AI in healthcare, but we also want to protect our privacy. Is there even a way to achieve both?
That's the challenge we're facing, right? And it's not just about the technology itself. It's about ethics law, public policy. We need to have these open and honest conversations about these issues and develop frameworks that make sure AI is used responsibly.
This is getting pretty deep. But before we totally disappear down this rabbit hole, let's take a breath and transition to part 3. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to explore. So join us as we delve even further into the potential impact of Lumia AI on our lives, our work, and our future. Okay, so welcome back to our Lumia AI deep dive. And we've been following along with Schneppert's work here. We've gone from like that adaptable world formula to the potential impact on healthcare and jobs and everything. It's been a lot. But before we wrap things up completely, I want to circle back to something we've kind of touched on throughout. The whole idea of the ethics of AI.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? Schneppert doesn't just celebrate all the cool stuff Lumia can do. He keeps reminding us that there's this responsibility that comes with it. Like, hey, this is powerful stuff. We got to be careful.
Exactly. And I really appreciate that about his approach. It's easy to get caught up in all the excitement around AI. But we do need to stop and think about those tougher questions. So how does Lumia actually address those ethical concerns then? Like what safeguards are they putting in place?
Well, Schneppert keeps coming back to two main things: transparency and user education. The idea is that the more we understand how AI works, the better we can use it responsibly.
Right. It's about taking away that mystery and giving people the tools to understand it so they can ask the right questions, challenge assumptions, and actually make informed decisions about how AI is used in their lives. It's like we need to become these like AI literate citizens almost.
Yeah, I like that. And that's where Lumia's approach is really interesting. Schneppert highlights how they're really putting a lot of effort into that user education piece, explaining clearly how the system works, how the data is being used. It's all about building trust through being open.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're taking the right steps to make sure that AI serves us, not the other way around. But, I keep coming back to that point about AI being more and more integrated into our lives,
Mhm.
especially through our phones and devices. Like, what happens when AI is always there, always learning from everything we do?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a mind bender. Schneepat acknowledges that, yeah, there's potential for things to go wrong,
Misuse bias, unintended consequences.
all of that. But he also thinks that the answer isn't to, like, hide from AI. It's to really engage with it thoughtfully and critically.
So it's not about fear. It's about shaping it, guiding its development and making sure it aligns with our values. It feels like we're at this crossroads,
Yeah,
and the choices we make now will determine how AI impacts society in the future.
that's a great way to put it. And that's really what Schneepat's work is pushing us to do, I think. To think deeply about all this, to have these open and honest conversations, and to really be active in shaping the future we want.
Absolutely well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. Huge thanks to Jörg-Owe for giving us so much to think about. And of course, to all of you listening for joining us on this journey. Remember, the future of AI, it's not set in stone. It's up to all of us to shape it. So keep those minds curious, keep asking those tough questions, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.